Pick a side. If you like this story, check out my other stories. Shadow Monarch in DC. And, if you wish to read more or simply support me, then check out my Patreon at URL. You can get access to 3 more chapters or 7 more chapters if you want. // The Great Hall of Winterfell had quieted. The feast had long ended, and the warmth of the fire did little to ease the lingering tension that Aeron Grim's visit left in his wake. Robb Stark sat at the high table, his eyes lost in the hearth's flames, a half-finished goblet of mead forgotten in his hand. Jon Snow sat beside him, his posture upright, quiet and thoughtful. You did the right thing, Jon said, his voice calm and certain. For the North. For your people. Robb didn't answer immediately. He swirled the contents of his cup, then let out a breath that carried the weight of a crown. Did I? He muttered, bending the knee to a man who appears out of shadows and commands things not born of this world. It doesn't feel like the kind of victory I dreamed of. Jon leaned forward slightly. He's dangerous, but not mad. I've seen mad. I've fought it beyond the wall. What he did back there, he saved lives. He didn't have to, but he did. Across the hall, Arya had her feet up on a bench, tossing a dagger from hand to hand as she listened in. She grinned. I like how strong he seems. All that shadow stuff, he looked like a ghost king from old Nan's tales. I wonder if I could learn how to do that. Robb turned to shoot her a disapproving look. You're not learning shadow magic, Arya. She shrugged, unfazed. Would make a fine trick if I ever need to disappear. Sansa, seated just beside her, sipped her wine with a faint smile. Honestly, after what you all said, I expected someone terrifying. You made him sound like a demon in armor. But he wasn't that. He was striking. Arya glanced at her sister. Striking. Please, don't tell me you have a crush on the Shadow Monarch. Sansa flushed, her cheeks turning pink. I only said he wasn't hideous. There's a difference. Robb raised an eyebrow and groaned. Even you too. 7 hells. Maester Luwin chuckled as he approached. Well, Lady Sansa, if one were thinking of alliances, marrying someone like Aeron Grim could have strategic value. Sansa's eyes widened. Maester. Robb raised his hand. No, absolutely not. I'm not marrying off my sister to a man who walks out of shadows and tosses knights like hay bales. Jon gave a small smirk. A man who protected your family. Whether he meant or not. Robb looked at him. For a moment, he said nothing. The fire crackled behind them, and the silence felt deeper than before. Finally, he sighed. He said quietly. But just because he's not our enemy, doesn't mean he's our friend. Bravos. The tavern in Bravos was warm and humming with life, a stark contrast to the chill of paranoia and betrayal they'd left behind in King's Landing. Candles flickered in hanging lanterns, casting golden light across the stained wood and smoke-filled air. At a corner table, cloaked in shadows, Tyrion Lannister leaned back in his chair, swirling his goblet of red with the ease of a man who had narrowly escaped death, and was beginning to find the humor in it. He took a long sip, savoring the rich Dornish vintage before slamming the cup down on the table with dramatic flair. Would you believe it, Varys? Poison in my wine. My wine. Have these bastards no sense of poetry? At least slit my throat at a brothel, let me go out smiling. Varys, seated opposite him with his hands folded neatly, raised a brow. I did try to warn you. The small council grows increasingly uncivil. Tyrion scoffed. Uncivil is when your father disinherits you. Attempted murder inside the Red Keep. That's patricide with extra seasoning. He leaned forward, eyes gleaming with venom. It was him. I can smell his hand in it. He never wanted me alive, just useful. A Lannister tool, nothing more. And now you are not so useful, Varys murmured. Tyrion barked a bitter laugh. But I'm alive. That's worth a toast. He raised his goblet and downed it, then signaled for another bottle with an exaggerated flourish. And what about you, Lord Spider? Tyrion continued, voice dropping. Why follow me all the way to Bravos? Surely King's Landing is missing your skittering feet in the hallways. Varys's expression tightened. His usual calm, unmarred by chaos, flickered for the briefest moment. I came, he said softly, because the realm is lost. The small council has descended into madness. They can't listen to reason anymore. All because of him. Tyrion narrowed his eyes. Him, the Shadow Monarch, Varys whispered, as if the name itself might conjure the figure from smoke. Aeron Grim, that man until he walked into our world with armies made of death and powers no maester can explain. I've spent my life believing in reason, but this man terrifies the irrational out of me. Tyrion exhaled sharply, a rare seriousness hardening his features. He poured himself another drink, hands slightly less steady than before. Unfortunately, he muttered, I had the pleasure of meeting him in person but I kept it to myself. Varys leaned in. And, what was he like? Tyrion stared into his wine as if searching for the right words at the bottom of the cup. Cold. Controlled. He doesn't speak like a noble or a madman. He speaks like a man in control, giving orders to ants. And when he looks at you, you realize you don't matter. Not truly. A tense silence followed. Varys whispered, how terrible. Tyrion let out a long breath. Arg, I don't know what's true anymore. All I know is that if he wants the throne, there might be no stopping him. The two men sat in silence for a moment, the buzz of the tavern fading to background noise. Varys finally spoke. Then the question is not how we stop him, but how we survive what's coming. Tyrion raised his goblet once more, the firelight dancing in his eyes. To survival, he said, voice dry and haunted. And to finding the winning side before the world burns. They drank in silence. The tavern's warm glow dimmed for a moment. A gust of wind stirred outside, rattling the wooden shutters like skeletal fingers. The fire in the hearth hissed, but it wasn't the wind. Tyrion blinked. Then again, his wine sloshed gently in the goblet he held until something on the floor caught his eye. His shadow was moving. Not as it should. Not in time with his hand. Not with the flicker of the firelight. No, it stretched, slithered, tore itself free from the floor beneath him. Tyrion stared, mouth slightly agape. He raised his wine closer to his face and squinted at the cup like it had personally betrayed him. Speaking of shadows, he muttered, blinking rapidly. Am I too drunk, or is my own shadow walking away from me? Varys, whose calm had always been unshakable, leaned forward, his expression unreadable. Then we are both drunk, he whispered. And suffering the same hallucination. The air grew colder. The hum of the tavern faded behind a soundless pressure like reality itself was holding its breath. The shadow pulled into a humanoid form eyes. Then, like smoke drawn back into a bottle, it compressed, shifted until a figure stepped forward from the dark swirl. A black coat swayed gently around him, laced with hints of violet. His eyes, those unholy, gleaming violet eyes, glowed like they had been carved from amethyst and set in onyx. Aeron Grim had arrived. A smile curled at the corners of his mouth, too calm, too knowing. Long time no see, dwarf. Tyrion's goblet fell from his hand and shattered on the tavern floor. The wine stained the wood like fresh blood. Tyrion pointed, pale as snow. It's him. Varys stood abruptly, his chair scraping the ground. His mouth opened, then shut. No words came. The other patrons seemed frozen in place, conversations halted mid-laugh, mid-drink, as if they felt something unnatural had slithered into their midst, even if they couldn't see it. Aeron glanced around the tavern casually, hands behind his back, completely unfazed by the fear he commanded. This doesn't seem like Westeros, he murmured. I thought you'd be in capital. It's my mistake for not checking first. You, how did you? Tyrion stammered, struggling to form coherent words. We were just talking about you. Aeron gave a slight shrug. Well then, it's fate. Varys's eyes darted to the shadows, then to the door. You can listen through shadows. I can do far worse, Aeron replied calmly, stepping forward. Tyrion slumped slightly in his chair and waved a hand. Well, if you're here to kill me, please make it quick. I've had a terrible week. Aeron chuckled, just slightly. Relax, Lannister. If I wanted your head, it would be resting in a goblet already. You really know how to put a man at ease, Tyrion muttered. Aeron looked to Varys. You left King's Landing. Smart. The vipers there are blind to what's coming. And you aren't, Varys asked softly. Aeron's violet eyes burned brighter. I am what's coming. The silence that followed was absolute. Then, Aeron turned his gaze back to Tyrion. You still have a role to play, dwarf. You're clever. You understand the game. So I'll make this simple. He leaned in just enough for both men to feel the weight of his words. Pick your side, before the shadows do it for you. // If you like this story, check out my other stories. Shadow Monarch in DC. And, if you wish to read more or simply support me, then check out my Patreon at URL 12 comments 0 vote. Valar Morghulis. If you like this story, check out my other stories. Shadow Monarch in DC. And, if you wish to read more or simply support me, then check out my Patreon at URL. You can get access to 3 more chapters or 7 more chapters if you want. // Tyrion poured himself another goblet of wine with a trembling hand, but this time, skipped the cup entirely and drank straight from the bottle. His eyes flicked to the dark figure beside their table, still, composed, and unblinking. The Shadow Monarch had not vanished. He had been there the entire time, like a ghost that refused to be exorcised. Well, Tyrion muttered, licking wine from his lips, given the circumstances, I suppose I'm in. Varys arched a brow but said nothing. I mean, Tyrion gestured vaguely at the shadow still coiling near his feet. I don't see what use you have for me. You're all-powerful, terrifying, and mysteriously fashionable in black. What could a dwarf with a sharp tongue and a love of drink possibly offer you that your legions of shadow demons can't? Aeron didn't smile. He didn't blink. Varys spoke instead, softly. It's clear, Tyrion. He has all the swords he needs. What he lacks is counsel. Tyrion turned to him. You flatter me. I speak only the truth, Varys replied. Men like him may shake the world, but it is men like us who ensure the world doesn't fall apart once it's been shaken. Aeron's gaze drifted to the spider, narrowing with slow, deliberate intent. I know you, he said. Varys, the whisperer, the spider. Will someone like you ever serve me loyally? Or will you, like so many others, wait for a moment of weakness, then scheme in the dark? Varys's hands were calm, but his eyes tightened. Aeron stepped closer, shadows following him like loyal hounds. If you intend to betray me, if you think I'm just another ambitious ruler you can quietly push off a ledge, don't bother. His voice dropped, low and menacing. Because if that's your plan, you may as well slit your own throat now. It'll save you the pain of what I'll do to you when I find out. Tyrion, wide-eyed, gave a slow, impressed nod. Well, he muttered, he's not subtle, is he? Aeron turned to Tyrion now. And you speak in riddles and drink like it's your last day, but I've seen what you are. I don't need flatterers. I need minds. Do you have one? Tyrion raised the bottle in salute. You wouldn't be the first to question it. But yes, I do. And while I generally try to avoid shadow-wielding tyrants who could squash me like a grape, I must admit. He took a long swig, wiped his mouth. You have my attention. Varys spoke at last, voice even but resolute. We're not kings. We don't seek thrones. But if your rule brings stability, if it protects the realm from what's coming, then yes, I will serve. Aeron didn't speak right away. He only looked at them both, and in that moment, it felt like the entire tavern was holding its breath. Good, he finally said. I don't care for loyalty bought with fear. But I require it. You serve me now, and in return, you will survive the end. There is something coming, could be a big threat, could be nothing, I don't know. Then Aeron turned slightly just enough to let his shadow stretch long against the wall. I have kings to kneel, he said, eyes glowing faintly violet. And time is not on our side. Tyrion's eyes were half-lidded in thought. What threat are you talking about, by the way? He asked casually, though the weight behind his words lingered in the air. Aeron opened his mouth to speak, but suddenly. System notification. An apostle is nearby. His breath hitched. His glowing violet eyes flicked left, then right, across the firelit tavern. The chatter had died the moment he appeared. Most patrons still hadn't decided if they were merely drunk or cursed by shadow magic. Some sat frozen mid-sip. One man dropped his tankard entirely, too terrified to move. Aeron's gaze swept the room, slow and sharp as a drawn blade. He locked eyes with Varys, who merely raised a pale brow. Then he turned to Tyrion. Tyrion, still seated, blinked at him. Why are you looking at me like that? He asked, voice dry with sudden unease. Aeron's tone was thoughtful. No, he's just a dwarf. He can't be the apostle. Tyrion huffed. Charming. And what in the seven hells is an apostle? Aeron didn't answer. His stare turned distant. Without another word, he stood and stepped out into the brisk night air of Braavos. The stars glittered over narrow alleys and the wide bay, the sea singing low in the distance. And there, on the horizon, the colossal titan of Braavos loomed like a silent god of war, standing vigil at the mouth of the harbor. Aeron narrowed his eyes. This city, home to the faceless men. He muttered aloud, I've dealt with their blades before. Sent a few back to the darkness when I was headed for a shy. But an apostle, none of them were that. A faint shuffle of feet. Aeron turned. An old man stood at the alley's edge, hunched, wrapped in rags, skin the color of wet parchment. His voice came rasping and low, like dead leaves. Valar Morghulis. Aeron paused. His own voice dropped in tone, solemn and cold. Valar Dohaeris. The old man nodded, shuffling past him. Then, he paused, his back still turned. Aeron Grim, a man of shadows. Aeron's spine stiffened. His fingers curled as shadows began to stir faintly around his boots. He turned slowly. It's you, isn't it? You're no one. The old man smiled without turning. Then his form shimmered, melted, shifted, the rags fell away like mist. Before Aeron now stood a young man, no older than 20, with jet black hair, a smooth face, and a calm, knowing smile. His eyes were a disquieting void, empty, but watching. Indeed, the young man said softly. A man is no one. The night wind carried the words between them, heavy with ancient weight. Aeron's jaw clenched as 1,000 shadow strands coiled faintly beneath his feet. He smiled, dark and intrigued. Then you are not here for a simple greeting. The alley behind the Bravo Sea Tavern was quiet now, save for the sound of lapping waves and the soft rustle of wind. Aeron stood still, silver fangs in hand, his violet eyes cutting through the dark like twin beacons. Shadows coiled at his boots like obedient beasts. A voice came now, soft, calm, deceptively gentle. A man has no choice but to do as his god wishes. Aeron didn't turn, not yet. He smirked instead, his tone dry and edged with dark amusement. And your god seeks my death. There was a pause. Then, from a shadow near the wall, no one stepped forward. His face was youthful now, almost beautiful, yet cold as winter's breath. He moved graceful and precise, as if every step were ordained by something far older than steel. A man would like to prevent bloodshed, the faceless assassin said, voice smooth. But it is the will of the many-faced god that you be stopped. You tilt the balance. You cast a shadow too wide. Aeron turned, finally facing him. His eyes burned like the heart of a dying star. So I cast a long shadow, and now your god is afraid of the dark. The faceless man didn't respond, only blinked. Emotionless. Unmoved. Let me guess, Aeron continued, taking a step forward, his voice hardening. No words will change the course. No plea will halt your hand. The decision was made in some cold hall, beneath statues of death, and now you've come to collect. A man obeys his god, came the reply, colder this time. A man serves the balance. Aeron's eyes narrowed, his grip on his blades tightened. Then I suppose there's no point in talking, is there? No one tilted his head, just slightly. It was the closest thing he showed to regret. No, there is not. A breath passed between them, like the stillness before a storm. But the quiet didn't last long. Aeron's silver fangs in his hands, each blade humming with dark energy, shadows dancing and coiling like living tendrils along the razor-sharp edges. Aeron's voice was low, amused, and edged with arrogance. Do you really think you have a chance against me? But the figure before him, no one, didn't flinch. Didn't speak. He simply vanished. Like smoke in the wind. Like a whisper swallowed by silence. Gone. Aeron tilted his head slightly, his grin widening. Stealth. He turned slowly, shadows twisting at his feet, ever restless, eager. You lot keep impressing me with these little tricks, he said aloud, more amused than alarmed. Powers like this would make any man a king in this world. His eyes narrowed, glowing a violent violet, unnatural and piercing. The gods must really be afraid of me if they're giving out gifts like these just to keep up. A soft footfall behind him. Too late. Aeron turned in an instant, his reflexes sharpened and his body honed like a blade forged in war. He spun, grabbed the face of the reappeared assassin with one hand. And with a snarl, he slammed him into the cobblestone, the alley echoing with a thunderous crack as stone shattered beneath the force. Dust flew. The assassin, now fully visible and stunned, gasped for breath as Aeron leaned in, violet eyes glowing like twin stars of doom, his voice ice cold. I'll answer for you. He pressed harder, shadows creeping up the young man's limbs like chains. You don't have a chance. He leaned closer, voice like prophecy. And you can't kill me. // If you like this story, check out my other stories. Shadow Monarch in DC. And, if you wish to read more or simply support me, then check out my Patreon at URL 10 comments 0 vote. Faceless, forgotten. If you like this story, check out my other stories. Shadow Monarch in DC. And, if you wish to read more or simply support me, then check out my Patreon at URL. You can get access to 3 more chapters or 7 more chapters if you want. // The assassin exploded from the cracked stone like a beast reborn, flipping backwards midair, landing crouched atop a broken archway. He darted forward again, faster, more aggressive. This time, his daggers weren't just blades, they were illusions. Aeron could see them shimmer, duplicating mid-swing, becoming a swarm of ghostly weapons aimed at every vital point. But Aeron's eyes glowing with deep violet fire saw everything. He spun his silver fangs in his palms lazily. Then, clang. With one fluid movement, he shattered the illusionary blades with a sweep, slashing through the copies and into the real attack, redirecting it. No one skidded back, panting. Aeron grinned. You thought that would work. Try thinking next time. No one vanished again, but this time, Aeron didn't wait. He flicked his fingers, and a pulse of shadow chains burst from him like a sonar wave, bouncing off every wall, window, and chimney of the alley. From that instant, a flicker, behind him. Aeron turned like lightning, elbow crashing into no one's ribs before he could even raise a dagger. He followed with a knee to the gut and a spinning strike from the hilt of his silver fang, knocking the assassin off his feet. Your god gave you speed, but not enough time to learn how to use it. No one landed on all fours, blood dripping from his mouth. Then he growled. A low, unnatural sound. His face began to change again, this time shifting rapidly from child, to crone, to nobleman, to merchant, to faces Aeron didn't recognize. The magic of the faceless god, unshackled. But Aeron only smirked. You're not the only one who can wear many faces. He stepped forward, his body unraveling for a brief moment into writhing darkness. Aeron activated bloodlust. His face wasn't entirely human. His presence warped the air around him, heat and cold battling for dominance. No one hesitated. A split second. But it was enough. Aeron blurred. Silverfang slashed. The right dagger, gone. Left hand disarmed. Both wrists, bound by chains of shadow. And then, like a puppeteer, Aeron yanked no one into the air and spun him midair before slamming him into a nearby wall, twice, 3 times, until the stone cracked and the assassin collapsed into the dust. Panting, bloody, barely conscious. Aeron walked to him, unhurried. You faceless ones, he said, crouching beside him. You think death is the end. That wearing no name makes you untouchable. No one tried to rise, coughing blood into the stone beneath him. His body trembled, more from realization than pain. This wasn't a man. This was an executioner in the shape of a king. Aeron stood tall, silver fangs sheathed. He didn't need blades. Not for this. Let me teach you what it means to be forgotten. Then he moved. One hand gripped the faceless one by the throat, lifting him like a child's doll, and hurled him into a pillar with bone-shattering force. Wood splintered. The structure cracked. Before the assassin could hit the ground, Aeron was already there. A knee slammed into his stomach with the force of a battering ram, bending the assassin in half midair. A twist. An elbow to the spine. The crunch echoed across the quiet Bravo C street like a war drum. The assassin coughed blood again. This time it hit the cobblestones in long, red splashes. Weak. Aeron growled. He grabbed the man's collar and slammed him against the ground. Once. Twice. Thrice. Each slam created a crater in the stone. The impact quaked through the bones of anyone watching. The cobbled street had turned to rubble beneath them. Then, with a flick of his wrist, he threw the man across the square. The body hit a wall and bounced off it. Before it could fall again, Aeron was already in front of it. Boom. A spinning kick cracked across the assassin's face. Crack. A jab to the sternum drove the wind from his lungs, his ribs twisting unnaturally. Wham! A flying knee collided with his chin, snapping his head back with a spray of blood and broken teeth. The faceless one was in freefall now, disoriented, broken, half dead. But Aeron wasn't done. Not even close. He descended, like judgment, caught the man midair, one hand on his ankle, and spun, full circle slamming him into the ground like a hammer of the gods. The stone beneath shattered like glass. The assassin gasped, tried to crawl. Aeron stepped on his back. Still breathing, he asked coldly, violet eyes burning. No one didn't answer. He couldn't. Aeron lifted him by the neck once more. You kill kings, poison lords, whisper in shadows and call it fate. He clenched his fist. But me. His knuckles cracked. Power surged through his arm, shadow gathering like a storm cloud into his fist. It was a mistake to obey your god. He punched. One blow. One. And it detonated. No one's head launched from his shoulders like a stone from a trebuchet, blood and mist trailing in the air as it soared, before vanishing into the harbor waters with a distant splash. The body hit the ground. Limp. Final. The shadows receded. The silence returned. Aeron stood over what remained. You didn't stand a chance, he whispered. As the wind whispered through the blood-stained alley of bravos and the body of the faceless apostle lay broken at his feet, Aeron stood still, breathing calm, posture relaxed, as though he hadn't just ragdolled a servant of death incarnate. Then it came. A low, familiar chime echoed in his ears. Ding. You have defeated. No one, apostle of the many-faced god. You have leveled up. Item acquired. Mask of the Forgotten Faces. A writhing mask that shifts forms, showing countless expressions. Ability. Assume the identity of any humanoid you've slain in the past 24 hours, gaining access to one of their memories or skills. Before him, the mask appeared, hovering inches above his open palm. It was a terrifying thing. Its surface crawled with countless faces, old, young, male, female, morphing and warping in an endless, silent scream. A grotesque tribute to the many lives it could mimic. Aeron stared at it, lips curling into a satisfied smirk. Now that looks useful. The mask dissolved into black mist and vanished into his inventory. Another chime echoed, this one colder. Notification. Apostle slain. 3/8. Aeron's eyes narrowed. The air around him darkened slightly as his violet glow returned. Still 5 to go, he muttered, voice low and sharp like a blade drawn in the dark. He looked toward the Bravo Sea skyline, the Titan looming in the far distance, and felt the tug of fate coil tighter around him. Let them come. One by one. Asterisk. Tyrion and Varys, the two figures crouched behind a half-collapsed wall in a narrow Bravo Sea alley, wine forgotten, breaths held. Smoke lingered in the air like a ghost, the scent of burning shadow still fresh from Aeron's wrath. Somewhere not far from them, the splatter of blood marked where no one had died, violently, gloriously, undeniably. Tyrion broke the silence first, gripping the edge of a cracked wine goblet with trembling fingers. His face was pale, his voice dazed and dry as the Dornish sands. Am I still drunk? He began slowly, eyes wide and darting between the alley's broken bricks, or was that the most glorious yet most terrifying fistfight between two very human yet not so human-looking men I've ever witnessed? He took a shaky sip. I mean, he tore his head off. With a punch. That's not even dramatic, that's just offensive to physics. Varys, beside him, blinked once, lips pursed thoughtfully. You're not drunk, the spider replied coolly, though even his usual composure seemed cracked. If anything, you're finally seeing what the rest of us only feared was true. Tyrion made a small noise that might have been a laugh. Shadows, terrifying eyes, magic swords, exploding heads, and I thought wildfire was bad. He looked over at Varys with a raised brow. You sure we're on the right side of history here? Varys folded his hands, glancing toward the direction Aeron had walked. I'm not sure there is a right side anymore, he murmured. Only the side that survives long enough to right it. Tyrion sighed. Well, I suppose if we live to tell the tale, I'll make sure it sounds far more flattering for us. He paused. Then, but for the record, I'm not drinking around him again. I'd rather get drunk with Cersei. Varys chuckled softly. That would be suicide. Tyrion raised his goblet in mock salute. Yes, but at least Cersei never suplexed an assassin through cobblestone. He shuddered. Gods help us, we're following a monster. Then after a beat, he added, a sexy, terrifying, unkillable monster. But a monster nonetheless. Varys sighed. For now, let's just stay useful to him. And very, very far away from his fists. // If you like this story, check out my other stories. Shadow Monarch in DC. And, if you wish to read more or simply support me, then check out my Patreon at URL. 8 comments 0 vote. Advisors and allegiances. If you like this story, check out my other stories. Shadow Monarch in DC. And, if you wish to read more or simply support me, then check out my Patreon at URL. You can get access to 3 more chapters or 7 more chapters if you want. // Tyrion and Varys thought that Aeron had left, and then just as suddenly. You don't think I was going to leave like that, did you? The voice was calm, smooth, dangerous, and it came from right behind them. Tyrion's goblet exploded from his hand as he yelped and spun around, landing on his backside with a thud and flailing like a startled cat. Varys let out a rare gasp, stumbling back with wide eyes, his calm mask slipping as he instinctively reached for a dagger he didn't even carry. Aeron Grim stood over them, shrouded in his dark, regal armor, eyes glowing faintly violet. Shadows still clung to his frame. His expression was somewhere between amused and annoyed. 7 hells, Tyrion sputtered, brushing dust off his tunic. Is sneaking up on people your hobby, or do you simply enjoy watching grown men wet themselves? I expected the smell of piss, Aeron said dryly, but not from you, Tyrion. I'm unpredictable, Tyrion said, trying to regain composure. It's what makes me charming. Varys, ever the spider, stepped forward with a cautious bow. My lord, you gave us quite the fright. My apologies, Aeron said, not smiling. Then he reached out, placing a firm hand on each of their shoulders. Wait, what are you? Tyrion began. Exchange, Aeron said simply. The shadows around their feet swallowed them whole, and in a blink, the grim alley of Bravos vanished, or rather they did. The world snapped back with a gust of cold sea air and the echo of waves crashing against black stone cliffs. The trio now stood atop the wind-swept causeway of Dragonstone, the sky above painted in crimson hues, the ancient castle rising behind them like a sleeping titan. Welcome to Dragonstone, Aeron said. Tyrion's jaw dropped. What, I mean how did we, so you can disappear and appear wherever you want. Varys, taking in the ominous silhouette of the castle and the dragons carved into the stone, merely whispered, you are making your base here, in Dragonstone, he murmured, voice quiet with something like awe or perhaps worry. Aeron didn't look at him. His violet eyes were fixed on the horizon, where hundreds of sails billowed in the bay. Black ships, gray ships, ships of Valyrian design. A fleet had gathered disciplined, unified, and vast. The banners fluttered in the wind, and one of them made Tyrion's eyes narrow. Yes, Aeron said softly. This is where it begins. They followed his gaze toward the docks, where a great ship had just lowered its gangplank. A silver-haired figure in regal attire descended with the grace of a lioness, flanked by unsullied and cloaked advisors. Above her ship, the red three-headed dragon of House Targaryen snapped in the wind. She is here, Aeron said, a hint of something reverent in his voice. Tyrion's brow furrowed. She. Varys's mouth thinned. Tyrion followed his gaze and his eyes widened. The banner. The silver hair. The impossible presence. Both men spoke at once, stunned. Daenerys Targaryen. Tyrion blinked several times, then slowly turned to Aeron. Is she your ally? Aeron gave a faint smirk. More like, my queen. A beat of silence followed, and then Tyrion and Varys exchanged one of their infamous glances, silent conversation flashing between them like lightning between storm clouds. That can mean many things, Tyrion said carefully. So what exactly do you mean by my queen? Aeron turned his head just enough for the glow of his eyes to catch the light. I mean precisely the first thing that came to your clever little mind when I said it. Tyrion blinked again. Ah, well, all right then. He picked up a stone from the ground, tossed it in the air once, and let out a dry, incredulous laugh. A powerful man who commands the very shadows, he said, and now, a dragon queen is his consort. He turned to Varys, who had said nothing, his eyes still fixed on the silver-haired woman below. Westeros, Tyrion declared with a wry toast to no one in particular, is utterly, thoroughly, and gloriously fucked. Aeron, standing tall with his arms crossed, glanced over with a smirk. Don't be like that, Golden Dwarf. You make it sound like I've come to raze Westeros to the ground. Tyrion raised a brow. Well, considering you command an army of shadows, casually slaughter assassins, and appeared in a tavern by peeling yourself out of a bloody shadow, forgive me if I'm still a bit unclear about your intentions. Aeron's eyes gleamed violet. If I wanted utter destruction, Tyrion, I could make it happen. Right now, I don't even need Daenerys's armies. Or her dragons. He smiled then, slowly, ominously. As a matter of fact. His gaze tilted upward. Tyrion and Varys followed it, then froze. Tyrion's hand trembled. From the heavens descended a titan black as midnight, wings wider than the castle towers, eyes glowing with ancient fire. Its body was monstrous, more beast than dragon, and it moved with an unnatural grace as it circled overhead, its scream splitting the sky like a falling star. Varys took a sharp breath, his face pale. By the seven. Tyrion's mouth was open. By all the gods, that's not a dragon. That's a bloody nightmare. With a thunderous crash, the beast landed beside Aeron, shaking the stones of Dragonstone itself. The heat from its breath alone made their skin prickle. Its claws were larger than carts, its maw big enough to swallow a dragon whole. That, Aeron said calmly, placing a hand on its snout, is the cannibal. He looked over his shoulder, grin still on his lips. And he's more than enough, if I wanted to destroy. Tyrion stared, wide-eyed, then turned to Varys and whispered, remember when I said he was a monster? Varys nodded slowly. I take it back, Tyrion said. He's the bloody apocalypse in a man's skin. Aeron strode confidently across the volcanic stone of Dragonstone's courtyard, the cannibal looming behind like a silent omen. He turned back to Tyrion and Varys with a grin. Come, he said, violet eyes gleaming. Let's go say our hellos. Tyrion muttered under his breath, God save us from enthusiastic introductions, while Varys simply pulled his hood tighter, sighing like a man being led to a very polite execution. At the grand entrance to the keep, Daenerys Targaryen awaited them, silver-haired, regal, draped in black and crimson. Her expression was unreadable as Aeron approached and extended his hand. It took you all a while to get here, Targaryen lady, he said smoothly. Dany took his hand with a faint smile. Well, Aeron Grim, I thought you'd be welcoming us first, even though your dragon is surprisingly fast. Aeron chuckled. I had to do certain things rather than wait here idly. We'll discuss them inside. He gestured back toward the duo hesitantly walking up the steps. One of those things was acquiring us some counsel. Tyrion gave a small, theatrical bow, one hand on his chest. Tyrion Lannister, former Hand of the King, lover of wine, and deeply confused about how I got here without being set on fire. Varys gave a polite nod, his tone careful and composed. Lord Varys, Your Grace. Former Master of Whisperers, still fond of peace, and survival of the realm. Dany's eyes narrowed slightly. I know who you are. The spider, and the Lannister, dwarf. Tyrion gave a wry grin. That tone, Your Grace, sounded a bit too threatening. I assure you, I'm no threat. Just look at me, all I have is a golden tongue. Varys cleared his throat delicately. And I only serve the realm. I always have. Daenerys arched a brow. We'll see if that's still true. Aeron just smirked and gestured toward the Great Hall. Come, we have plans to make. And a world to break, or save. Daenerys didn't move as the great black wings of the cannibal stirred the wind behind them, sending the banners of House Targaryen fluttering above Dragonstone's walls. Her eyes stayed fixed on Tyrion and Varys, sharp and discerning. Are you sure? He is a Lannister after all. She said quietly, can they be trusted? Aeron didn't hesitate. His voice was calm, certain, backed by something darker that hummed just beneath the surface. They're two of the finest minds the Seven Kingdoms have to offer, he said, glancing at the pair behind him. When it comes to schemes, whispers, and pulling the strings behind thrones, few can match them. He stepped closer, speaking low for Daenerys' ears alone. They've survived mad kings, civil wars, assassins, and worse. Not because they're strong, but because they're smart. And if we're going to outmaneuver the madness and schemes brewing in Westeros without burning it to the ground, he looked toward the horizon, eyes flickering violet, we'll need more than dragons and shadows. We'll need them. Dany studied them for another moment. Tyrion, who stood with like he was auditioning for the role of court jester, and Varys, calm as always, watching everything with spider silk patience. She nodded once. Very well. // If you like this story, check out my other stories. Shadow Monarch in DC. And, if you wish to read more or simply support me, then check out my Patreon at URL 10 comments 0 vote. War Council. If you like this story, check out my other stories. Shadow Monarch in DC. And, if you wish to read more or simply support me, then check out my Patreon at URL. You can get access to 3 more chapters or 7 more chapters if you want. // Dragonstone, the painted table room. Night winds howled against the ancient volcanic stone. Shadows danced along walls lit by flickering torches, and in the center of the war room, the legendary painted table stretched like a map of conquest, carved in the shape of Westeros. The gathered voices of the living and the undead echoed across history's most fabled war chamber. Daenerys stood at the head of the painted table, her eyes fixed on the miniature carved keeps and cities. The flicker of firelight glinted off her silver hair, her expression regal and unreadable. To her left stood Missandei and Grey Worm, silent and watchful. Ser Jorah stood to her right, arms folded, eyes ever on Aeron. Aeron Grim leaned against the edge of the table, his shadow coiling lazily at his feet like a living thing. Tyrion and Varys stood off to one side, hushed, both watching, both calculating. Suddenly, about time you remembered we were here. Nice of you to leave Marine without checking on me or the men that came with you. A familiar voice rang out, sharp and laced with something between sarcasm and hurt. Heads turned. At the far end of the room stood Raya, arms crossed, a northern scowl planted firmly on her face. She strode toward them without hesitation. Aeron blinked once, then scratched the back of his head, awkward in a way none had ever seen before. I really had no time, he muttered. I'm sorry. In fact, I still have no time. Really? Raya stepped closer, eyes narrowing, her voice like steel wrapped in silk. Her gaze pinned him where he stood. Tyrion looked toward Daenerys, dry amusement written across his face. Northern women, he murmured, apparently are still scarier than shadow-wielding terrors. Aeron shot him a flat, withering look. Tyrion simply smirked. Daenerys, who had been watching Raya and Aeron with the same intensity she reserved for battlefield foes, suddenly turned, voice clipped, cutting through the tension. Well, Aeron, you mentioned the Stormlands. Aeron exhaled and stepped forward. His finger traced the map on the painted table and landed on Storm's End. Yes, he said, I took the keep, destroyed some Baratheon banners in the process. But I wouldn't say I've conquered the entire Stormlands, yet. He looked up. My soldiers still hold the keep. And they will continue to do so, unless I call them back. Varys spoke next, his voice smooth and unsettlingly calm. We've heard whispers of your immortal wraiths holding Storm's End. Word as they humbled Kevan Lannister and a full host of allies. Tyrion gave a low whistle, half impressed, half terrified. Poor uncle, hard to inspire loyalty when your men piss themselves at the sight of a shadow, he said. Still, credit where it's due. Storm's End is no easy keep to take, let alone hold. Daenerys nodded, lips pursed in thought. It's a strong foothold. From there, your conquest could reach east, west, or north. She paused, eyes narrowing slightly. If conquest is what you seek. Aeron's smile was faint, razor-edged. I'll give everyone a chance to bend the knee. The north already has. The Stormlands, he glanced at the carved castle again, is as good as mine. And the west? Tyrion asked, arching a brow. Stubborn and arrogant, Aeron replied. But I like that about them. Tyrion gave a short chuckle. Gods help me, I think you mean that. The West only respects strength, and gold. If you lack the second, you'd better give them a terrifying demonstration of the first. Aeron turned, shadows curling at his back like wings. And as for the others, his voice darkened. They'll follow the strong. Right now, I'm still just a ghost story to them. Whispers in the wind, and they haven't seen your dragons. His violet gaze locked with Daenerys. His voice dropped, but it thundered in every heart. We show them both of our might. Daenerys studied him long, silent, eyes unreadable. Then, slowly, she stepped forward beside him. Fire met shadow. You're suggesting a show of power, she said, tone careful. An alliance of fear. An alliance of truth, Aeron said. Let them see the dragon and the shadow walk side by side. Let them see the fire that burns cities and the darkness that swallows armies. Missandei shifted slightly. Jorah's brow furrowed. Grey Worm tensed but said nothing. You want to show them we are not conquerors, Dany said softly. But an inevitability. Yes. Aeron met her eyes fully now. Because when the strong stand together, the world doesn't just kneel. It breaks. A hush fell over the painted table. Even the wind outside seemed to quiet. Tyrion finally exhaled. Well then, he said, raising an imaginary glass, here's to terrifying partnerships and kingdoms shitting themselves. Aeron turned, the flickering candlelight catching the edge of his dark coat, shadows clinging to him like armor. His eyes found Raya, still standing tall, still unshaken despite the kind of people around her. You shall be my general, he said, voice calm but absolute. And I mean general of the living. You're a strong northern woman after all. Raya raised a brow, crossing her arms. Am I? A beat passed. Aeron stared at her and gave a slow, deliberate nod. Yes. She narrowed her eyes, stepping closer, her voice lowering just enough for the sarcasm to creep in. Are you trying to get rid of me? Aeron tilted his head slightly, a small smirk curling at the edge of his mouth. Why would I do that? You'll lead an army of the living, and a sizable force of my shadow soldiers. A chill ran through the room at the mention of the shadows. Missandei glanced toward Grey Worm, who remained stone-faced, hand resting on the hilt of his blade. Raya exhaled sharply, a sigh full of grudging acceptance and veiled concern. I can't refuse you, can I? She muttered. Then louder, with a smirk of her own, fine. I'll do as you say, Aeron Grim of Bear Island. But you better pay for this service. Aeron's lips curled into a true genuine smile. I will. There was a sudden cough, awkward and cutting. Everyone turned. Daenerys, whose face had been unreadable for moments now, finally stepped forward, her voice clear, if a little tight. Very well, Raya, she said, eyes flicking briefly to Aeron before returning to the Bear Island warrior. You shall take my Unsullied alongside Grey Worm. Land at Storm's End. From there, take the Stormlands. Secure every banner and castle. Grey Worm gave a silent nod, his presence like a blade drawn halfway. Aeron looked over the painted table once more, as if plotting on the bones of old kings. Then, without warning, he turned his eyes to Raya. Once that's done, he said, his tone shifting from formal to deliberate, I'll give you further instructions. Personally. And then he stepped closer to the table, eyes glinting with intent as his hand hovered over the miniature models of Westeros. As for myself and Dany, he said slowly, his voice growing darker, deeper, prophetic. We take to the skies. You and I on Dragon's Back. And we pay a visit to the Vale. The Riverlands. The Reach. The Westerlands. His fingers tapped the map, each name punctuated like a war drum. Let them tremble. Let them witness the new order rising. One born of fire and death. Varys, hands folded tighter in his sleeves, the corners of his mouth barely twitching. A bold gesture, he murmured, but fear can be a powerful tool, when wielded carefully. Or a fire that burns out of control. Tyrion raised a brow, walking slowly around the painted table. You want to drop in on the great houses like some terrifying welcome tour. He said dryly. Not exactly subtle, is it? Aeron smirked. Subtlety won't win a kingdom. True, Tyrion admitted. But nor will madness. Just don't expect a warm reception in the Westerlands. He glanced at Daenerys. They may be more scared of you, Aeron, than even your dragons, especially if you two arrive together. Daenerys stepped beside Aeron, her expression now resolute, her voice commanding. Fear not, we are not going to cause chaos. The fire in the room seemed to burn hotter. The air felt heavier. History itself had turned to listen. Tyrion shook his head slowly, muttering under his breath. Gods, Westeros is not ready for the two of you, so please. Don't do anything you might come to regret. Aeron looked at Daenerys, the shadow of a grin still playing on his face. Don't worry, dwarf. We won't do anything unnecessary. // If you like this story, check out my other stories. Shadow Monarch in DC. And, if you wish to read more or simply support me, then check out my Patreon at URL 11 comments 0 vote.